I'm Alexandra Kreis, and you're listening to Outer Travel in a Journey. Journeying now for 30 years into the life and practice of yoga, I have met many who have taken interesting turns, went past extraordinary bumps, and reached unexpected places. People with whom I shared conversations about everyday struggles, intimate realizations, larger questions, ideas, and dreams. So today, I'm passing on the mic to one of them so we could hear and celebrate the wisdom in people's differences and experiences. Hello, welcome to Outer Travel in a Journey. My name is Alexandra, and today I'm sitting down with a good friend of mine who I met in Berlin, Jon Thorisson, originally from Iceland. Hello, Jon.
Hello, Alexandra. Good to be here.
Thank you for coming to the show. Jon, Jon used to live in Iceland, and then you found that your health was declining in various ways, your mental health and your physical health almost, or your emotional health, I want to say, not your mental health. You're a very clear person. And that kind of spiraled you to Berlin, and that's where we met. And now you went a little bit further to Portugal to increase what you want to do with your life. That's how I perceive you. And do you want to talk a little bit what brought you to move away?
Well, it was events in my private life that had led to my desire to sort of try to reinvent myself and move on with my life. So I decided to move to Berlin, and about around that same time I had some health issues that I was struggling with, and got resolved in Berlin. Actually, I enjoyed the excellent public health service in Germany. And at about the same time, I was introduced to psychedelics.
Yes.
Were a huge part of my recovery. So I had, basically, to make a long story short, I had lung cancer.
Right.
I was already 60 plus, and it's not a great prospect.
Mm-hmm.
So I considered not doing anything,
Yes.
because I didn't want to, if you get on that wagon, it's very, very difficult to get off it again with chemotherapy and what have you. So but in the end, I decided that I would have an operation. So the tumor was removed, and then I went home and somebody provided me with a 6-week dose of cannabis oil, so THC.
Yes.
So I
wow.
in bed for 6 weeks and listened to sacred music and was high as a kite. and did a very, very good recovery. And since I have, done lots of shamanic sessions with ayahuasca, which have been very, very important for my recovery and sort of it's like, things like this happen and you try to give it meaning. It's like, so, what is this? Why is this happening to me? And how can I use this, not to use it to as an excuse of giving up, but as a springboard for, regeneration. And that's that has been my mission.
Yeah, the reason why I wanted to speak to you on this show is because I think you're one of the few people that I know of who is openly speaking about the use of substances for healing.
Mm-hmm.
And which always blew my mind when I came to meet you is the willingness to really go into that part of healing your mind through substances.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be super curious, how was that for you? My first question would be to you, were you familiar with cannabis and ayahuasca, you name it, before you got sick? And if you weren't, how did you trust this path?
Well, I did a little bit of exploring in my early 20s. And then life took over, and I, went and had an education and got married and had children and a career, and there was no room for anything except for alcohol, of course. The most detrimental substance that I've ever used. But around about the time that I was diagnosed with cancer, I got introduced to ayahuasca. Actually, it was like 6 months before I went to my first ayahuasca session in Berlin. And I had been made aware of this world through a very close relative who works with a shaman in Mexico. And I was curious, but I always thought, well, I'm not on my way to South America or to Mexico. So, this was like a thing that I didn't think I had access to. But then the opportunity presented itself in Berlin, and I did a couple of sessions, 2 days in a row, and it totally opened a new world to me. And I realized, and then when I got diagnosed with cancer, I realized that this would be a tool. Well, for one thing, it took away the fear. So when I heard that I had cancer, I thought, okay, so now I already had died in an ayahuasca session, and I know it's not the worst, so I'm not afraid. Dying is not something to fear. So I was totally calm, and I think that was one of the, or is in general, I mean, fear is a terrible, terrible thing because it takes over your mind, and it gnaws away at everything. So I think that was, for me, was a very, very fortunate discovery, that dying is not the worst thing.
So would you feel that part of you, that you got the diagnosis so close to the sensation, the real sensation? I had that sensation myself in the session, that I was dying and I was fighting it fiercely, I remember. And I remembered this for a good while. That kept me alive. But I must say, obviously, at some point now, years on, I have come back to this illusion that my life is not ending. I think this illusion we live a lot of the time in because we need to. And then, but you having that first, this experience through the ceremony with the plant medicine, and then being diagnosed, that was necessary for you to have these two experiences in a row. Is that something that you would, you agree obviously on, or do you feel you're at this point where you consciously notice that dying is part of living? I mean, we cannot hold that in our consciousness, I feel, otherwise we cannot live, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's an integral part, and I'm thinking in our modern times, it's like, and we see it now, particularly through the whole, unmentionable virus situation, that is as if people think that death is something that can be totally avoided.
Yes.
We are so risk averse and afraid of, and like with the COVID, I mean, the statistical probability of getting the virus is extremely low, but the measures that are being taken are, outlandish, to say the least. I think in general, I think we would benefit from a bit more of a relaxed view to living and dying. I mean, it's not like and it totally changes your. It's not like, if you are not afraid of dying, it doesn't necessarily mean that you want to go there, but it makes you more relaxed in your approach to life.
Let's talk a lot about dying. Is that okay for a moment?
Yeah, totally.
So I think my own perception, and as I reflect that only for myself, but also observe it in others, we're all okay with, like, of course we know we're dying, but we do come in with an egotistical intent of when we want to die. You know, I mean, I often talk with my husband about like, oh, I want to get 108, you know, and my husband says like, okay, I'm going to come half, you know, it's going to come along a little bit of that way. And when we are faced, and you have been faced with the scenario of like that you might be dying younger than you intend to, you know, then that's what scares us, isn't it? Or how do you see this now?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, because of the lucky circumstances that I had done the couple of ayahuasca sessions, you know, when I got diagnosed, my attitude was, okay, so this is, you know, dying is not the worst. And so I wasn't afraid, which meant that I had the presence of mind to make my own decisions about how I wanted this to evolve. So I did the absolute minimum, you know, although I contemplated doing nothing in terms of, you know, intervention and just seeing how this would develop. And I did the minimum, and then I took it my own way. I didn't return to the hospital for any. Well, I went for a couple of checkups, and then I just said to the guys, you know, I don't want any more of this, because it puts, I mean, this whole, you know, healthy hospital situation puts you in a frame of mind where I didn't want to be.
Mm.
And I think, you know, not. I think it's really important not to feel that you're the victim of your circumstances, but you, regardless of what they are, that you can take your own decisions. You don't have to be, you know, you're not a victim. You can.
Yeah, and I agree, because if I think about all the people that have come up with healing methods, they have come out of similar situations like you, and that was to make a choice and to embrace death, and in embracing it and accepting it and seeing how you want to experience this end of your life as much as possible. They started their healing journey. That's the funny thing, where we kind of go blind, right? And the moment we feel helpless, we want to get help. And then that help is sometimes somebody else taking over your mind and kind of guiding you to something. While crucial part is your own mental aspect in it, right?
Yeah. But I mean, I think I mean, if you are not controlled by fear, you realize, you know, you see the opportunities, you know, and like for me, it was like an opening to, you know, wanting to experience life, you know, to enjoy all the good stuff, and to be, you know, and to I don't know, it's difficult to explain without something cheesy.
But say something cheesy, because I think it's totally, that's why people call it cheesy, but it's so real. Say something cheesy, please.
No, I mean, it's about you know, opening your heart and your mind to all the you know, the magic of life, and the you know, incredible experiences that you can have, and people that you meet, and if you are open to it, it's like, well, we have talked about this earlier. It's like you know, you approach things with an open heart and a positive mind, and that influences whatever situation you enter.
Yeah, and I think it's not cheesy, and the fact that we both kind of sneak around this, because we're both intellectuals in some form of ways, you know, the fact that we are both not aiming to enter this wording is showing how little, even though we've done already both of our fair share of growth, you know, like how little this is respected, and this disrespect kind of chases the words back inside instead of saying, yes, you know, I want to live. I'm reading this book Untamed by which kind of got into the New York bestseller list, and she is kind of saying, wake by Glennon Doyle. She's saying like, wake up, stop pleasing, you know, and I feel this like in our conversation here for the public, we're both kind of still trying to please everybody and not say things that aren't allowed to say, right? So I, and this is where I wanted to talk to you about you, because you are about to say something to the public, hopefully in a book.
Yes.
Yes, about things we're not allowed to say, and it's not about the heart only.
I sometimes joke that, you know, I live in the future where everything I do is already legal.
Yeah.
I think it is very, very important, you know, and that's why I'm trying to you know, moderate my statements. Statements, because I don't want to scare people away. You know, you don't want to sound too, you know, woo-woo, or, you know, like you're off your rocker. I'm a totally normal person. I'm just, you know, I don't have any issues, you know, psychiatric issues or anything. I'm just moderately fucked up by my upbringing and childhood, like everybody else. And I have, you know, benefited immensely from using different substances, you know, from ayahuasca to MDMA, and experienced their therapeutic benefits. And not only in terms of, like, you know, the healing. I mean, there's a limit to how much you can heal, you know, if you're a relatively normal person. But that some of these substances, they have actually, you know, a concrete effect on your brain. You know, like creating new pathways, and different parts of your brain start talking together, so you are more open to new experiences and new things, and it sort of, well, like, you know, we all know. I mean, people grow older and they get sort of set in their ways, so they know what they like and they know how they do stuff, and they start excluding new experience and don't want to take on new experiences. I mean, I have friends who stopped listening to new music when they were in their early 30s. And I never listened to anything that I listened to before I started doing psychedelics.
Yeah.
I want new music. I want new experiences.
Yeah.
I think it's, you know, taking some of these substances, they can really help you in opening your, you know, I think it's the therapeutic phrase that is used is your default mode network. So, you know, your brain runs on like on routines.
Yeah.
And with some of the psychedelic or some of the substances, that the default mode network is downgraded. So that, and that's also how the therapeutic part of it works, is that you are able to revisit, like, you know, old traumas or memories and look at them from a different perspective, without the fear and the hang-ups that you have associated with them. And that is how the healing occurs.
Yeah.
It's a big word. I mean, that's how you can let go of, you know, old luggage, old shit.
Yeah, but I think it is the healing path, and that is what we all are struggling with. I think my podcast, my show is around not so famous people, obviously, but it's about the people, the ordinary people who have their experiences and don't dare to talk about it, even though it's happening for them. And as we are, because I think there's people in the limelight who've gone down and under and came out like a phoenix, you know, with really dramatic experiences. And that's why we respect them, because of their courage. But I think a lot of us have a lot of courage in ourselves, and we go through it in smaller waves, you know, like you were going through this in like, oh God, yeah, I've done this part for society. I've done my upbringing of kids. I contributed to society on a different level in my country. And now, where am I with my life and my experience? Why has it gone so stale? And I hear you saying that part of your life going stale was then this shift where you needed to separate, and where you also needed not only to separate but also to become aware of that you have a life, and that that life has an end. Yes. And so the healing as such, or that what they call yoga, or becoming one union with, all the parts of yourself, is is then to see like, okay, I cannot hold on to these old tricks. What are the new tricks? You talk of letting go, and that's basically at the root of healing for me, and a root of awakening or becoming, more connected with what is our innate nature, because patterns have helped us to go somewhere, and then maybe we went down the wrong way, and this is where we need to start let go of methods, and opinions.
And it's I mean, as you or for me at least, it has meant that I'm much more willing to look at what I really like and go with that. To associate with people that I think are, have energy that I like, that I don't have, I don't feel as much sense of duty of playing games, social games, pretending to be this, that, or the other. It's for me, it's much more about the emotional and spiritual side of life, of letting go. It's like somebody said, you spend the first half of your life of earning money and buying shit, and then you can spend the second half of your life getting rid of it. And I've been going through that a lot, and I realized that letting go of worldly baggage, like possessions, is immensely freeing.
Yeah.
And basically now I have, for the longest time I had lots of things in storage, and I've given it all away. I basically can move with a few boxes with mostly clothes and books, and it's very liberating.
Yeah.
And to instead of focusing on gaining worldly possessions, I go for experiences and exploring.
And
I think for me, I mean, when I got divorced, it was like, for me, it was like the question, okay, so how does an old guy like me, where do I go from here? And what I saw around me was basically, well, not very uplifting, so I had to find my own way of, because I didn't think that this was the end. I believed that there would be, more positive and exciting things to live.
Yes.
But society is not on that page. I mean, it's like there are so many expectations because you have reached a certain age, then you're not supposed to do this, that, or the other, and I'm like, fuck that. I do whatever the hell I like.
And why not? And that's
hurt anyone?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I say why not? And I think this is like my whole interest is to, as much as to say that to others at this point in my life is like, when will you ever believe that uniqueness is not through whatever you do in the frames of societies, and that there is a place for you, but where uniqueness is everything we adore in other people. Like when we look at Frida Kahlo, I mean, I think of artists and everybody who got, known for the uniqueness. It's not because she was special, but she just trusted that path. And that's what I'm hearing you say. And that you and I, we were framed by moral ethics and upbringing, and we allowed ourselves to be framed by that for a very long time until we came to the point, or you came to the point to say, like, let's F this. And now, since I've died already 2 times, once in ayahuasca and second through the diagnosis, I might as well do what I do. And this is so liberating. And I think this liberation brought you onto the path of exploring substances, as you call it, in your own measurements and using it for guidance, which is something not a lot of people want to talk about. And again, maybe you want to say a little bit around your own experimenting and experiencing these fields of self-exploration and self-guidance.
Yeah, and I think that we have talked about this earlier, but I think because now it's all coming. I mean, there's lots of science and research being done, and the results are fantastic of how psilocybin and MDMA and different substances can benefit people who are in dealing with serious issues. But like I said earlier, I mean, it is also beneficial for people who are not dealing with any serious issues but just want to grow.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, and that's what I want to talk to people about, is that you can do it yourself. Mushrooms, for instance, they grow more or less all over the world, and they have no idea that they're illegal. So you can go and harvest them, and if you know a little bit, if you educate yourself a little bit, you can use this. You can do mushrooms on your own. Well, you always have to have a sitter.
Yeah.
But I mean, you don't have to go on expensive retreats with shamans, and you can do this stuff as a do-it-yourself, and then I wouldn't call it therapy, but it's like,
yeah, it's the intention that is behind that. Yeah, I remember Aldous Huxley writing this book on moksha, and he definitely dabbled in these things before LSD was born. He dabbled in the more natural substances that you mentioned there. And he always did that with his girlfriend, wife, as a sitter, because the sole exploration of it was to figure out what he needs to do next and what is happening to our consciousness. Is that a little bit along the lines where you landed with your own research?
I mean, you can. I mean, I've done a lot of the shamanic retreats with ayahuasca, and it's different when you do it on your own. It's not so intense, and maybe you are a little bit more careful. But I think that there are tremendous benefits to be had if you do it in the right. I mean, it's all about the setting, and so what do you bring to the session? Is that you do it in a secure environment, that there is somebody to take care of you, and you have music to play, and you lie down and you go into it, wanting to explore either specific issues or just see what the substance will bring you. And you can have wonderful experiences. I mean, just in terms of beauty and pleasure, and the intensity of the music, or even if you do like people do, go out in nature, it can be an incredibly intense and giving experience to be out in nature doing LSD, for instance.
Yeah.
Because it opens up all your senses, and you experience nature at a level of intensity that is incredible. It can be, and it can be, and I mean, not everything has to be so serious. I mean, doing psychedelics for fun can also be great.
Which a lot of the youth people do these days when I take an E and go in dancing. That is something that has become acceptable, non-acceptable in our society, even though it's not allowed. We know that's going on. It's like you said earlier, people know what booze can do to them, like what drink can do to them, and we all started accepting it as a legal drug. And you mentioned earlier that's the worst drug we can take, actually, because what happens for you when you drink, Jon?
It disconnects. It's like a sedative, whereas most of the other substances are more about connection.
Yeah.
And for instance, about, you mentioned E or ecstasy or MDMA and dancing. And I've done some of that. And to me, it's like a religious experience. You go out on I've been to the Boom Festival, where I was also working in harm reduction with Cosmic Care. But I also did a little bit of MDMA and went onto the big dance floor. So you're basically with, 30,000 people dancing to music that is so loud that your whole body vibrates. And it's a way of getting out of your head and into your body. And then in that way, it's very, very uplifting and liberating.
Yeah.
And it's like a ritual. I mean, it is a ritual. And I think I think your whole body starts vibrating not only to the music, but also to the energy of the people around you. And it can be incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, totally. Because it's a body experience, isn't it? If we're denying ourselves the body experience, that what we talked about earlier as well, in this pandemic situation where we don't have bodily experiences with other people any longer, because we're not allowed to come too close unless it's a partner. And some people don't have partners, some people don't have kids they can hug because they're in the family. We're completely disconnecting and losing our body even more. And then when the mind is on it by itself, the ego is by itself, and then the whole kind of monkey show begins, right?
Yeah. And I have a very lively monkey show on any given day. So to me, like the dancing scenario is a fantastic experience, because it's like your mind just quiets down.
Yeah.
And it's very, very giving.
And this is where Ayurveda and yoga is so detrimental in learning and understanding. And I don't even mean the classic, what we see as yoga these days, the body movement, but that we accept and live through all the sheets of us, which are the mind, the body, the breath. When you dance, you get into coordination with your breath. You just have to allow it to come into existence. But so many of us are stifled in this area, and then to allow the subconscious to come forth to do the trick. And that's happened. And what you're more or less talking about is that despite you finding the connection with your body, the subconscious needs to be triggered much more, and can be triggered much more through the substances, and can unite through all these sheets, right?
I mean, it's a lot about letting go of, stop being so controlling.
Yeah.
And that I mean, if you can do it, you can do it in a session with substances, or you can do it on the dance floor, or even you don't have to go to the Boom Festival to experience that. You can do it in your own living room, basically. But to me, that started reflecting into my daily life. So I mean, because in my life I have been a little bit, wanting to control everything and believe that I could hold the sky up. Or one of the reasons the sky didn't fall down was because I was holding it up with my arms. But now I'm much more accepting and willing to accept whatever, it's like this old saying of expectation is the mother of all disappointment. And people have a lot of that, going into situations expecting them to be to unfold in some specific way, instead of just going into the situation hoping for the best, but in a non-specific way, so that you can accept. It's not that you stop caring, but it's about, because you can never control anyway.
Yeah.
So it's about, being open to, and taking on be willing to take on whatever happens. And I think for me, it's one of the big lessons that I have learned.
Yeah.
Is to not to be so controlling.
Oh, and I know so much what you're talking about, and I feel like, what's that movie called with Meg Ryan? You know, that famous movie where she has this scene in the diner where she fakes an orgasm.
Oh, yeah. Sleepless in Seattle, I think it's called.
No, that's a different one. But anyway, what I'm thinking is like how it was made, you know, how endearing that was made, that somebody is so controlling about like what she does. She orders all her food separate with the sauce on the side, and then love swoops in and love comes in to soften her. And that's what I hear you saying, you know, like it's the moment you understand that when subconscious and everything comes into sync, it's like a total experience of love. And then when love comes in, you soften and you understand that you don't need to control and that you can let go, as you call it. Yeah.
But it's different from being careless. It's not the same as being careless.
Yes.
But it's, of course, you always go wanting, the best.
Yeah.
But it's about the non-specificity, if that is even a word,
If that is a word.
Not wanting things to unfold according to your agenda.
Yeah, it's about respecting outcomes. We might want to go a certain direction, but if we are too controlling, then we are trying to control the outcome, which we cannot always control. And that brings us back to that even science is about being open and curious about the outcome of. And yeah.
I mean, it's like, for example, I mean, I have friends who I go out for dinner with. They're so precise in what exactly they want on the menu,
Yeah.
And sometimes I say, I mean, come on, you're not getting married to the menu. I mean, it's just a meal. And it isn't absolutely the 4-star expectation that you have in your head. It's okay, because you will have another meal tomorrow. Just take the experience,
Exactly. And that brings me back to that movie, which is called When Harry Met Sally. Now I got it.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, that's the one. But you're right. And that's what I mean. It was made endearing, and maybe it put forth the wrong message because we all got hooked onto this scenario, where she is kind of or I did, which I found super endearing, and not seeing where it brings us into total isolation because she couldn't connect to Harry with all her specificity, or however we want to call that, between the two of us. And yeah, I'm totally for letting go.
I mean, and then you also realize that when you relax and you're willing to open up to new experiences, there are plenty to be had.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, when I got divorced, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, what I saw around me were guys my age who were sort of stuck in a place, and they felt like there was no way forward. I mean, all the fun had been had already. And so what was waiting ahead was golf and old age, and and I think well, I haven't proven anything to anyone but myself that this doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah, and
I've had some amazing experiences, and I've met, I have a new partner. There's a woman in my life that I met a couple of years ago, and we have an amazing relationship, and I made new friends in a new country, and the life is beautiful.
Yeah, and so when I meet you, it's always so full of ease, you know, and it's in that ease and expansiveness I see your creativity, because you're a total art person to me, you know, like you're art crafty in words and you're art crafty in vision, and you worked your previous career was around that, as far as I know, and but it in order for us to be creative, we need to understand that we can't regiment time all the time, how we do it, you know, and become slaves to the clock and slaves to a career move that is only solely based on production, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's all about, well, I can't preach to anyone but myself, but I mean, to me, it's all about um, being open and
Yeah.
accepting,
If there's one
and
last, yeah,
hoping for the best. And I mean, I to this day, I always think the best is yet to come, and
wow,
that makes life very, very exciting.
yeah. So I think this was a good point. It's good finish to our
Yes.
conversation. Thank you, Jon, for that and for making time to share a little bit of your journey.
Thank you. My pleasure. Hopefully, we
And
see
thank you.
you in real, in reality next time, without masks or any of all that bullshit.
I hope so. I hope so, dearly hope so. And yeah, and to you, listener, really, if I want to finish this show or episode, I want you to really take that in, what Jon said, you know, just stay open, be curious, embrace life. And I see you soon in my next episode. If you enjoy listening to my podcast, please consider to become a patron at patreon.com/Alexandra Kreis and pledge your donation.